good evening, everyone, to all the listeners. And here we are back with our third episode, quick episodes of how and what are those four essential workflows that every founder must master. In our previous, we started this journey of these four essential workflows, starting from the CRM. That is basically how we can make the most out of all our inquiries and how well we can get our opportunities pipeline or the negotiations pipeline or the pre-sales pipeline. And then we looked into last week the order to cash, where how we can streamline the entire process of sales and also into our receivables and stuff. This week we are here with respect to one of the most important aspects, where we can learn about how we can reduce the leakages, especially with respect to money going out or money being unnecessarily spent over purchases, especially most importantly the procurements and stuff. So this week we are going to look into the process of the purchase to payment, or we call it as procure to pay. So let's get into this. So basically, statistics says that 27% of the small and medium scale enterprises spend most of their money in untracked or misallocated things, and that kills the growth eventually, because many a times with respect, because of inventory, the lack of inventory visibility, or most importantly, unallocated budgets or something like that, people will be working in silos where the purchases will keep going on even though there is inventory, or even though the material could not be required, or even though something is not actually required in the first place. We would be procuring, and then the payables would spike up, and that leads to losing of a lot of planned cash and everything. So with this session, what we want to know is how we can make every penny intentional, especially with respect to procure to pay process, how we can eliminate the manual approval bottlenecks if there is various processes involved in the procurement. How can we streamline this, or what are the processes that we can look into, and how well Odoo helps us with all these, and most importantly, how well we can forecast the cash needs in real time using Odoo. So all these things we'll look into it in this session in a very quick manner. And since you all are aware that this year, in fact, a couple of days ago, Odoo's newest version 19 was released, which mainly focuses into how AI can be integrated with Odoo, starting from having an OCR, that is a system which will record the entire this thing, that is vendor bill or purchase transaction, with the help of a quick document scanning, to understanding the ledgers, what it needs to be posted, or giving the AI related aspects functionalities. So now we feel that AI enabled procurement isn't just an option, but that's how companies stays lean and in the race. So the agenda of today's session will be why procurement often slows the growth. We'll look into that. And then what is exactly a P2P solution, that is procure to pay solution, how well streamlined it has to be, and how Odoo will help us as a unified ERP platform. How will it help us with respect to streamlining the whole purchase to pay system? What all workflows are there with respect to Odoo, with respect to P2P? There are purchase requests and putting up the quotations, and then there is purchase orders with approvals. Then we receive the goods, and it could have valuations in place. And finally, the bill payments and the bill validations will be there. So all these things we'll look into it. And finally, we'll see what are the real ROIs for founders, and not just a cleaner process. So what exactly a founder can get out of a very streamlined process with respect to procure to pay. So let's get one by one. So why the biggest question is, why often procurement slows the growth? First thing is, as I mentioned earlier in the initial stages of the webinar also, or the session as well, it's an invisible spending, because especially in many of the legacy ERPs, or without any ERP systems, each one of the teams in an organization work in silos. What the inventory team requires, procurement team would not be fully aware of it, or the repercussions of it, or what the payment process or the age payables will be there, we would not be aware by the purchase team itself. So it is very hard to see who is buying what and why. So there is no full cycle, this thing, that who generated this demand for procurement, or whether it was actual demand which was needed. And then comes the approval delays. So for different types of purchases, there could be different sets of approvals with different types of things. For example, there could be hierarchical level based approval, or there could be value based approval. Could be for different types of purchases. There could be service purchases, there could be domestic goods purchases, there could be imports purchases, there could be capex purchases. So all of this can be in place, and for each one of these processes, there could be different types of approval, different levels of approval. And having this manually, imagine the bottlenecks, that is sending emails, recording each and every document. If someone rejects or someone puts out a comment, why is it required? What is this? Have we looked into the right vendors, the right prices? All these things will have lot of delays until a purchase order is given out of the company. So the approval delays will definitely slow down the whole process. Then comes the budget gaps, which is very much related to the first point, which is invisible spending, like where, for example, most of the organizations have a fixed budget. It could be per month, per quarter, or half yearly or full year, but they will define the budgets in such a way that for these types of projects, or for these types of R&D, or for these types of materials, we need to procure so and so, and this is my overall budget. We have to make sure we stick to the budget with a small buffer of 10 to 15% here and there. But many of the companies don't even have the budgets. Their ERP doesn't support it, or we can't track those budgets with respect to the whole procurement. And because of which, as I said, no clear view of upcoming cash commitments. Also, we'll never get into know what are we running into the next month, how much cash, how much money we will be left out with. And then comes, as I said, the costly errors, which are like could be with respect to late payments with the vendors, where the vendor might lose the relationship with the company because of late payments, bad debts that we owe to the vendors, or it could be with respect to delivery issues, that is, we could not get the actual delivery dates, or we could not return back the goods if there are any issues, or we handled the bills in a very bad way that it was mismatched. All these things, if at all we do not have a proper system in place, we don't have the visibility overall. So all these things will cost dearly to the company. And the last thing that any founder needs is a procurement process that's like a black hole, that is, it just sucks everything into it. So procurement, we say that procurement chaos isn't just an admin pain, it's a direct threat to the cash flow and supplier trust, and also to your ability to scale. So basically, having an internal process is very much important, wherein we maintain things, that is, we maintain the overall procurement system digitalized and also as a integrated system. Second is, with this, we maintain a very good relationship with our vendors. It could be for various purposes. It could be material supply, or it could be with respect to on-time bill payments, follow-ups, and everything. Along with that, we get to know what is our cash flow that has to go out. It could be in the next couple of months or weeks, so that we plan ahead. So that is that is the reason why we need to have a very good procurement system in place. Now, with all these things, we spoke about demand creation to procurement to approvals to receiving the goods and then creating the bills to payment. So what exactly is a P2P system then? So basically, a P2P system, or procure to pay or purchase to pay system, is an integrated digital journey from the moment an internal need is identified to the final point. That is where we call it as purchase request. That is, someone from the internal team, from the inventory, or from the admin department will create a purchase request, or they generate the demand, or even the purchases, the demand can be auto-generated based on we call it as reordering rules, where the material goes below a certain threshold. We immediately would have configured the system in such a way that it immediately creates a purchase request or a purchase order saying that, yes, my stock is going low, please do create a purchase request. Till then, so basically, to the last point where we verify the payment to the supplier, ensuring every single penny that we spent is visible. And most importantly, the reason, very clear, logical, and legitimate reason that this is why there was a demand generated, and this is how it was processed. And finally, the whole cycle was completed through material receipt, or with respect to service, providing a service, and then closing the entire, that is, entire billing and also the payments. Now, as I said, procure to pay, it's just not a process. It's also a strategic discipline of how we control our cash outflow. Last week we looked into how inflow will be working out. This is procure to pay is mostly about the outflow of the cash or the money, basically. So a unified procure to pay system is what anybody would look into. Basically, where we are looking at an integrated system which will have, starting from the generating of the demand, that is, generating demand to procure. It could be services procure, or it could be assets, or it could be current assets, or it could be any type of goods and services. Starting from the demand to the approvals and also all the documentation, then comes all the material receipt, or the capex receipt, or the service receipt, and then generating the bills, and then making sure we have the age payable in place so that my finance team knows when should I pay, what should I pay, how much should I pay, why should I pay for this, whether it was authorized procurement, was there any problem with the goods or services received, should I create a debit notes. All of this should be in place so that we have one connected process from request to payment. We have all the teams integrated. We have a stores team integrated. We have a purchase team integrated with the stores. We have a purchase team integrated with finance. So everybody knows why is this being done, or why is this procurement done? How much are we integrating, or how much are we investing into these procurements? And most importantly, with all this, we want less surprises or fewer surprises, so that we put out commitments beforehand, and also we make sure that the vendor is kept. I mean, basically, for us to run a good business, we have to make sure our vendor relationship is also good. So we make sure that on-time payments are done, on time these things are kept on. That is basically with respect to any commitments we put out on place. And with AI tools, as I said, within the ERP system itself, that gives you a real-time three-way matching or predictive approval routing, or it even can suggest this vendor goes with this particular default ledger, payable ledger, or it could be any other aspect, which will help us reduce the manual work. So basically what we say is an integrated solution that gives you control and visibility is what we need to have at every step. Then comes how we look into this P2P workflow in Odoo. So basically, what are the four different major aspects that we look into is, one is the request and approve, as I clearly mentioned, capture the demand and then apply rules upfront. That is, who is creating this purchase request? Are there any approvals? What type of purchase requests are these? Then consolidating these purchase requests and making it an RFQ and a purchase order. RFQ is nothing but request for quotation. That is, we might call for a tender. The company itself might call for a tender. They might have purchase agreements with the vendors. And then once all these things becomes, or they might create RFQs, they might have received different RFQs from the vendors, and they might choose one. We might have to compare the RFQs, and then finally an approval process will be there, which will turn one of the RFQ into an order. Once this is done, we might receive the goods. It could be goods or capex or services, which we'll receive and we will verify. If there are any issues, we might have to again have a conversation or communication with our vendors, so that we will have to return the goods with the debit notes or other aspects. We might ask for other schedules of the goods and all these things. Finally, with all these in place, documented one step after the other, like a waterfall method, finally we'll get into the billing and the payment. That is, we generate the bills for all the goods and services that we receive, and we generate the bills for the invoices that the vendor has provided, and we put out the payments for what we owe to the vendors. So the best part is, with all these steps, Odoo captures it in each and every process or each and every step. So it ensures no step is skipped or nothing is left out. So we'll see how it goes. So basically, let's look into the step one, which is the purchase request and approval flow. Over here in Odoo, we can put out purchase request. I mean, it could be through our calling for tenders, or it could be with respect to purchase agreements, or we can also put up a small customization where we can call it as a purchase request, and we can put it out where we can say what are the materials required, who does this material is required for, and how much materials are required. With that, we can have multiple approvals also. And most importantly, we need not put out any micromanagement with respect to maintaining all the documents in place. Rather, can be digitized in such a way that we can club these requirements and make it as the RFQ and the things later. So the step two is basically creating the RFQs. That is, once we have this demand in place, now we need to procure. We know the demand with the multiple purchase requests and stuff, and it is approved also that yes, these purchase requests are legitimate. Now we need to go ahead and purchase it. So to do that, we might require request to the vendors to provide us the RFQs, which they'll provide. We can upload it into the systems, and we can compare it, and we can also put out in such a way that we can look into it at once, and we can go with multi-layered approval, where we can have the approval, and one of them can become a view. All the document this thing or the communications can happen with Odoo itself with the vendor. That is, from between the company and the vendor. We need not depend on having all the documents separately in one place and then the email communications in another place. All these things, we can have all these aspects within Odoo itself. So as I said, we can compare the responses and we can stay efficient. And then comes the third step, where once the goods are received using our barcode scanners or these things, we can have a very good system where we can receive the goods or services. We can verify them. If there are any problems, we can return them. All these options are there. We can receive shipments of one particular purchase order in multiple schedules. All these things are possible to various warehouses or various locations in Odoo. And along with that, the moment we do this with a very good configuration of automated inventory valuation, the backend inventory also, that is the effect on the finance balance sheets and P&L, can also happen directly and instantly with the material receipt. And most importantly, we can get to see when is the, basically we can see the on-time receipts as well, which vendor is giving us on time, which vendor is giving good quality, because we also have quality module in place with the material receipts, where we can instantly trigger the quality checkpoints, and we can clearly say whether this received product is at quality or not, and then we can take necessary actions. Then comes the last step, where now I have the purchase order. Now I have received the goods. Now how do I raise the bill? We can scan the bills. We can put out the bills manually also. And then once we do this, it goes like a three-way matching. How much did I order? How much did I receive? How much will I bill? And most importantly, as I said, if there are any issues, we can put out the debit notes or credit notes if in case applicable. All these things can be done. And once the bills are put out, it will clearly show when was the bill raised, when was actually the vendor invoice raised, what are the payment terms, what are the these things like dues, and then accordingly, the moment bill is raised, even the age payable will come into effect. So most of these processes are automated or reduced manual efforts, rather than keeping them in all documents or in Excels. So basically, with the AI, this thing that is incorporated into Odoo AI auto flags the duplicates, or if there is any, if at all, that is a one good, very good feature, where if at all we have by mistake, if we enter the vendor invoice twice, Odoo will immediately flag saying that I will not allow the user to recognize one more bill in the same number, that is when vendor invoice number, because you're already generated one bill with the vendor invoice number. I'm not going to allow you to do the same, because every invoice has a separate number of its own. So such kind of small checks and balances are there, which will make any user do less mistakes. So with all these things, we can clearly get to know, with age payable in place, with my budgets, with my procurement plan in place, we can clearly get to see what is my cash outflow plan for next couple of weeks or for months or for any period. And finally, we are here where with all these things, what am I going to achieve? What is the real ROI for founders? It's not just a clean process. Most importantly, as I said, with checks and balances and with OCR or with AI systems in place, we will save a lot of time or even manual efforts as well. Because as I said, we have a feature in AI now in Odoo, where the moment we just scan a document of vendor bill, it creates a bill, it creates a document or a transaction in Odoo. Such good is that good is a feature. And then we have a real-time financial visibility. As I said, the moment we receive the goods, it will impact my balance sheet. The moment I put out a bill, it will impact my liability. It will clearly say when is it due, am I putting up anything overdue, or my finance reports are in such a way that it's very clear, saying that when is the next bill due, or have I put out any overdue or something like that. And most importantly, with all these things, we will prevent overpayments, or we catch mismatches immediately and reduce manual errors. And most importantly, with, as I said, this whole system of Odoo is built to scale, where we can add more vendors. We can have a very good communication, automated communication with Odoo, where we can send the purchase order copies. We don't have to download it and email it, but with a click of a button, we can either SMS it or email it or WhatsApp it to our vendors, where they'll immediately see and approve. We can record that also as a log in the whole transaction itself. And with these things, we will have to depend less on outside systems, but do more efficiently within one Odoo platform itself, one ERP platform itself. So with this, finally, I'll end this session with some couple of statistics, where with a very good process and with very streamlined process, Odoo users have reported 18 to 22% lower Maverick spend. And more because of the visibility, how much should I spend, whether it is legitimate and stuff. And they have reduced close to 30 to 40 hours of in every month, which used to go for manual processing. It could be for reports, or it could be for transactions, or doing the transactions with less time. And most importantly, we will be very well ahead of time, where we have achieved, through Odoo, it is achieved that 3 to 5 days faster supplier payments have been achieved, because we know what has to be paid when, so that we can keep up with the time. We don't have to put out on a last day reminders and stuff like that. So with all these things, That's what you have now seen what and how we have. I mean, we have the in-depth experience with respect to procure to pay process. Next time we'll put it with another topic, and like basically we would just want to ask you, like, what if you could see your entire purchasing history in seconds, like the entire reports or the transactions, or what you can put out is like how you could forecast the spending with pinpoint accuracy, how much would be required. So all this is possible with Odoo, so that we can have a very good efficient system in place. So we look forward for your next next session in the next 2 weeks. Thank you.